You're listening to The Score, a podcast for Valley sports enthusiasts.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Score podcast. I'm Dana Balish, and we're happy to be joined by Mark Porter from Scouting, Ohio. You've heard a lot about Mark. You've seen him on our broadcast, and we're here to learn a little bit about what Scouting, Ohio is. So, Mark, let's just start right there. First of all, thanks for joining us tonight. ScoutingOhio.com, people hear that. Tell us about it.
Yeah, it started in 2005, and it was much of a fluke. I was coaching and making highlight videos for the players I coached, and of course, because I played college football, I was going to try to help them get recruited. And we made these highlight films, and back then it was VHS and DVD. And that's how long it's going back. But as we made those, there was a father in town, Gene Bonanno, that had web technology to put videos online. And this was before YouTube. And to put a video online, it was dial-up, and it would take all night to upload a video. But once we started putting them online, the site took off, and we named it Scouting Ohio. I probably could have named it Scouting Youngstown and just stayed local, but guys like you saw the site, and we started talking about it, and we started showing the local players and giving them exposure. It went statewide a couple years later, where films from the whole state started coming in, and the basic concept was, let's put all these highlight films into a package and let the kids do this for free. And that was the key thing. Don't charge kids for sending in their film. And then let's make the college coaches pay to get these films. And we would add arrows and make them in the nice short highlights that were edited. And it was real easy to watch. And that business really took off. We had like a 12 DVD box set. And you can imagine what that entailed. But that's what we sold to colleges. And it's been 20 years now. And now it's Huddle is a system that, a lot of the highlight films are online. And it's kind of ironic. When I started, many people were like, you'll never make it. No one will ever watch video online. No one will ever look at their phone for a video. And 20 years later, people can't get off their phones looking at videos. And the college coaches have stayed with us for 20 years. And yeah, that's basically the gist of it.
So it was a leap of faith.
Yeah, and it wasn't meant to be a business at first. It was like, can we just do this and keep it free? Can we break even, so to speak? Can we just get enough money to have this place hosted and keep it alive and see if it ever will turn into anything? But there was a guy, John McAllister, who was a football scout in Ohio, like an old timer, and he actually scouted me when I was in high school. But he had a box set of VHS tapes, and he was doing the same thing and kind of showed me the ropes and said, this is what's possible if you can put together a nice enough package. And throughout 20 years, I didn't start off as a scout or a master evaluator. I couldn't watch 20 kids and probably tell you 1 through 20 who was the best. But sitting here today, a million highlight films later, let's say, I can watch 5 plays and tell you where you're headed and, what type of player you are. I could write a thesis on you in 5 plays.
This is beneficial not only to the local players, the statewide players, but to the college coaches, because you're kind of doing their, I don't want to say work for them, but you are.
Yeah, if you're familiar with what a grad assistant is for a college program, it's the guy who does all the grunt work, gathers all the names, gathers all the videos, puts them into a list. A lot of times I'm doing grad assistant work where a college coach is getting paid $100,000 or more a year. A lot of those guys are millionaires. They don't need anybody to tell them what they're seeing, just like I don't need anyone to tell me what I'm seeing, but they're the one that has to make the final decision, and they take the vetting process a step further. So if I can grease the wheels and save them a couple hours getting to that vetting process and getting these players lined up, that's the benefit of Scouting Ohio for them. They have limited time, limited staff, and they're kind of using me as an extra staff member.
And you're utilizing colleges at the major level, Division I, FCS 2, 3?
Yeah, when I first started, there was a real fascination with the Division I colleges. We had like a top 100 or a top 200, and that's what we were catering to. But it wasn't long, we realized there was money to be made with Division II, Division III, FCS, Ivy League schools, NAIA. In fact, we learned that the farther down that list, those schools have less resources and less staff members, so they need a recruiting service even more to help them get that jump start. So that Division II, Division III area, if you're within a 4 to 6 hour drive of Ohio, they're probably using Scouting Ohio.
And certainly you're not just local, you are statewide. You personally are traveling across the state.
That's the one part of this business that I learned that's like the everyone would do this job if you didn't have to travel so much. And for instance, last Thursday night, Avon Lake, I'm up there watching a game for Avon versus St. Ignatius. The next day I'm in Dayton for Trotwood Madison and Cleveland Heights and Hubert Heights Wayne and Fairfield. And then the next day I'm in Cincinnati for Moeller and Princeton. So it was a 1,032-mile weekend, and that's pretty common. And that goes for camps, that goes for the scouting combines that happen in May and June. So I'm really on a road a lot of the year, and my job is to bear witness, is just to see this stuff in person, make sure it's real, make sure kids aren't lying about heights and weights, make sure they're as fast as they say they are. I will send a college coach into Amish territory saying, yeah, this year you're going to make that drive out into the middle of nowhere and it's going to be worth your time. Where in the next year I may say, you know what, it's not worth your time. I went there already. I'm going to save you 2 or 3 hours. He's not what he says he is. And my word over 20 years it goes a long way.
How many athletes do you think you see per year?
That's a good question. There's at least 4,000 kids on my site every year. But if you consider that I go to a camp and there's 300 or 400 kids there, and I'm not laying eyeballs on all of them, but they all come through a drill sooner or later where I'm standing. And so I see them and I'm at 20, 30 camps a year. I mean, the numbers are 20,000 kids. Now, there's 40,000 kids in Ohio playing high school football. I may see half of them throughout their high school career. I mean, I'll be on the road every weekend. The college camps do a great job. Where a Toledo camp will have all of the Northwest Ohio kids there. So I'll be able to see tons of schools from Northwest Ohio all in one place. Same with the Bowling Green camp. So if I use college camp strategically, I can see a lot more kids than I could just sit at my desk.
So you're out camps in May, June, July, then you're going to games during the season?
Yeah, it never ends. Games, practices. My job is if you're in the top 200 players in Ohio, I'm probably going to make a trip to see you. So that's at least 200 trips a year, wherever I can find you. Sometimes I stumble upon you before you're a top 200 player, and I'm like, oh, okay, just found a freebie today. This week I'm headed to Liberty Center to see Kellen Weimer. They're playing Pemberville Eastwood. I've never seen either of those teams before, but he has an Ohio State offer. So it's going to take me deep into the territory in Northwest Ohio, and that's what I have to do. Last week I was at the biggest game in the state with Moeller and Princeton.
Sure. Do you get notified about players, or do you seek them out? How do you find out about a player?
Yeah, I have contacts for all the Ohio high school coaches. There's over 700 Ohio high school coaches. 300 or 400 of them contact me regularly with leads on players or once or twice a year. There are recruiting nights or recruiting fairs where up at St. Ignatius High School, for instance, all of the coaches in Cleveland will sit at a table around the gym, and they'll let John Marshall and Menor Lake Catholic and St. Ed's all into their gym where I can go from table to table and get information on the players. So I do a lot of recruiting fairs. It never stops. It's amazing how this has really turned into just an experiment, or Forrest Gump fooling around with something and getting lucky, being in the right place at the right time, to actually being a full-time job.
But this is a business. It is a full-time job.
Yeah, it really has.
You and your family have kind of embraced this.
Yeah, there's no way you cannot have your family involved in it when you're doing this type of traveling and on the road. You got to cover bases for each other, raising a family. My wife is a photographer. I will send her to games sometimes saying, you know what, I've already seen that player at Cardinal Mooney a couple times, but we need some photos of him for the website or for Bucknuts, or, and she's a physical therapist. She's so good at looking at players. She'll actually come back and say, I noticed this kid, you'd probably like this, because she's been around the house long enough.
Sure.
My kids know what a prospect is. My kids, unfortunately, have to deal with my criticisms that are probably meant for college guys that are, trickle down to their youth football, and they hear criticisms of their friends and things they should do. And it's funny when you're a scout how you see the game in a different way, and the score goes away and you're actually looking at it through an evaluator's eyes.
So coaches will call you and say, hey, I got player X. Player X is 6'3", 220, whatever, this. But when you go to see him, player X is maybe 6 foot, 190. Yeah. Do you get those types of things?
It's the high school coach's job to sell his players. So his job is to tell me the glowing report on this player. If you lie a little bit to make him better or exaggerate his stats, I don't care. My job is to sort through that and do the real evaluation. Thank you for your information. I'm going to take it back to my desk, and when I get back to my desk, I'll give him my evaluation. That's why the coaches trust me, is I can sort through a lot of that. There are coaches that'll say, I got 7 players that are D1. And I'll say, well, I should see you in the state championship game next year. But you were 4-6. So we know that that's not true, but that's their job. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I think there's handlers and trainers and guys that represent these players that'll work with them, and they'll sell me on the player is great. But I have to be the one who comes back to earth and says, here's where the realistic, line is.
Your knowledge of that, how did that all kind of come about? Was this your vision that you wanted to do this one day? Or?
Yeah, I said before, when I first started, you could have showed me 10 players and I couldn't tell. But the Rolodex or the database in my head is so long that when I see a player, he automatically fits in. If I see a quarterback, I've seen 10,000 quarterbacks. I know if this kid's at the upper end of that 10,000 or the bottom end of that 10,000, in the middle. And when I watch players on film, if I'm watching quarterbacks, I think there's 180 quarterbacks on my website. I'll watch them all in the same week, back to back to back. And that really lets you see the finite differences in arm strength and foot movement. And that goes for every position. But if you don't watch them back to back, I think you can get lost in, who's actually better or worse, because you need to see that consistency of the same position.
So college coaches use this as a recruiting tool.
Yeah.
That has to you've probably helped thousands of kids over 20 years.
Yeah, and I'm careful when I take credit or say I've helped them. I think Scouting Ohio is just the grease or the lube that helps their process. Most of these kids would be found eventually. I'm sure there's guys that may not have been found that I helped or whatever, but there are a lot of guys that take credit for the kid's recruitment and say, oh, I helped this kid, or I did this for this kid, or that's never the case. We just are getting you there maybe a little sooner, maybe putting you in front of people a little sooner, where maybe it wasn't going to happen to your senior year with us. It may happen your junior year where you get offers or you get noticed. But there is a real timing to this process. I try to find all these guys by junior year. That's the big year in recruiting. So, but yeah, I don't like ever taking credit. Your talent is what gets you your scholarship. Guys like me just have a system that'll help you put your talent on display.
So you find them your junior year, you evaluate them junior year, you watch them again. You see them a couple of times? Is that kind of?
Yeah, with a lot of those big time guys, I'll run into them at workouts and camps 4 or 5 times a year. So sometimes by the time their senior year's around, I've covered them as a freshman for Bucknuts or a sophomore. I've made films for them. I've watched their film for 3 years in a row. That's when I feel so comfortable about their grade or who they're going to be, because in this business, the more information you get, the better. And that's what's so tough is college coaches are busy with their season. They don't get to spend a lot of time, with these kids or going to see them live or watching them in workouts. They're getting these short sample sizes, and the shorter the sample size, the bigger there is, the more room there is for error.
Your website is taken off, scoutingohio.com. When people go to the website, what do they see?
They see basically a place for the players to register. That's the most important thing. The players register for free. But then they'll see a list of the latest offers in Ohio. They'll see some of the latest videos the kids have put up. There's photo galleries. It's a real business-like atmosphere there. It's not like something you go play around with. It's for the coaches to come in, and then they have a search engine, which is the biggest thing on the site, where they can type in Mahoning County and search class of 2027 or 2028, and they will get the list of all the prospects in Mahoning, Trumbull, wherever they want. They can say, I just want to see quarterbacks. They can say, I just want to see kids in Northwest Ohio. It really lets them save time. So if you're a college coach, you just want to see the top 200 players in Ohio, just come to Scouting Ohio and search it.
The adage is, if you play for a small school, they're going to find you.
Yep.
You're going to find that person.
Yeah, 20 years ago, you worried that if you were at a small school, no one would be there. But now that adage it's overexposure is the new adage. It used to be, now there are so many kids. Week 1 just happened, and on my Twitter feed, I had to have seen 500 highlight films in the last couple of days. Every kid in the world is sharing their highlights immediately on social media, small school, big school, whatever. Now, I don't worry if you're from a small school. Talent shows up anywhere. It's genetics and things like that. That's not limited. You have to live in Cleveland to have good genetics. You like to say, we'll go to Amish territory or places you've never heard of to find where a genetic freak has shown up. So I tell kids, if you're at a small school, if you get to college camps, you can go to the Ohio State camp being from a Division VII school, and you can go against a 5-star athlete there. And if you can do well against him, guess what? You're now a 5-star athlete or on that level. But it gives you a place to prove that I just don't play against other small schools. I go play against the best, and I compete against the best, and I show up doing well against the best.
Mark, you've been doing this for 20 years. Does one athlete just knock your socks off? I mean, you've seen the best of the best in the state. Is there one athlete that just knocked your socks off?
You would think that there's separation that are just a lot of those top athletes are all in the same, the one athlete that at Glenville was Marshawn Lattimore, and he was like a lockdown corner in the NFL. On offense, nobody could catch him. He was as fast as anybody. I just saw Jameer Brown from Huber Heights, Wayne, the other night, and he's a receiver headed to Ohio State. I think he ran a 10.3 in the 100 this year, won the 100-meter dash in Ohio. When he gets the ball, the black dirt balls from the sand fly up different. It's like he's tearing the field out from underneath him. He is so fast and so strong in his legs. When he takes off, the whole field looks like it's an 8th grade field, and he's just moving around and kind of doing what he wants, just waiting for other kids to make their mistakes. Wish I would have had a list of kids, because there's offensive linemen. I wish I would have had a list of area kids I could think of. I know when I first started that Cardinal Mooney and Ursuline had a ton of kids. And if you go back then, it was like Timmy Marlowe and Brandon Beecham and Michael Zordich and Taylor Hill. And I think Ursuline had like Jamel Turners and all these Division I kids in the area. So it was kind of a great start. Ishmaeli Kitchen, went on to play with the Browns. But yeah, it started off with, I think Warren Harding back then with Boom Heron, and some of those guys, like the Ohio State players that came out of this area. That was really my introduction to this area and scouting that group of kids or that era of kids.
One of the best running backs that I've seen in person is Maurice Clarett. Where would he kind of be, on your radar back in 2000, 2001?
I think he graduated in 2003 or something. Yeah, and I was 2005 was my first year. We had a Hall of Fame section back then where we kind of put, and he was one of those guys. At that time, I couldn't appreciate how good he was, but now having my database in my head, if I ever saw another kid that big and that fast in high school, it would be an automatic no-brainer. He just was a grown man. The compliment about him is he looked like a grizzly bear got loose in a daycare center.
What advice do you give athletes maybe in that sophomore, junior year, who think they're a prospect, who want to play at the next level? What's the advice?
The advice is to focus on your team and playing well for your team, and the recruiting process takes care of itself. You go play a good Friday night, you'll have highlights, you'll have good plays. You can't just worry about having good plays and not what your team goals are. So I tell kids, this recruiting process should be secondary to your team goals, secondary to what your team's trying to do. Once you do that, the process is your highlights from the year is going to be your resume. You're going to make a highlight film. You're going to have your high school coach have you send that out. And every high school coach is going to have a list of college coaches they know. You're going to sign up for places like Scouting Ohio that are going to help you get your name out there. And then in addition to your resume, you're going to have to get to college camps to go try out for colleges. You're going to have to be realistic about where you go to try out if you're a Division II player or Division I player. And if you go to Division I colleges and try out and you're dreaming for that and you're not getting the notice there or pulled aside, you're probably going to work back to FCS or Division II. But between your highlight tape and what you do at those camps, that's going to be your resume. And there are people that tell me that going to 10 college camps your junior year is about as valuable as 10 games your senior year as far as being seen and being noticed.
I think the key word in is that realistic. How important is it for not only the athlete, but the parents to be realistic?
It's impossible for the parents to be realistic. Every parent has overrated their kid by about 20%, which is normal. It's every parent that does that. And that's going to want you to do the best for your kid. You only get one chance to do this, and parents just want to do right by their kids. They just want to give them the chance. So they're going to be a little overzealous sometimes, and they'll come back to earth because, like I said, go to the Ohio State camp. If no one talks to your son, you got your answer. If they didn't pull him into the office after, you got your answer. And they have to start reading those type of tea leaves. If you go to a Mount Union camp and they don't pull you in after, you're starting to really get into the realism of like, okay, maybe there are other kids that are better. It's not that I'm not good enough, and it's not that I can't work to be good enough, but I may have to walk on, I may need 2 more years of development. You know what? I didn't take weightlifting serious in high school. I didn't start playing until my junior year. There's walk-on spots and those stories that pan out if you believe and you have the fortitude to stick with it and, really develop yourself. But for the most part, for the overzealous, the answers start to come as you go from camp to camp and you start getting in the car driving home going, wow, that didn't go, or those other kids in your line were very good.
Sure.
You start, if you're a receiver and you're there with 50 other kids, they're only looking at the top 3 or 4, and if you're one of the other 47, you kind of know.
Mark, what do you see as the future 5 years from now with Scouting Ohio?
We try to keep it simple because that's what college coaches wanted. And every time I have like a brainstorm on what could I do to make the website cooler, more advanced into the future, it's keep it simple. Keep saving time, find more ways to save time. So I think just grinding it out the way I have been is really the job. There's not much for advancement. I know that's not an answer I like having. I wish I could do more or buy technology that would save me time or drive the games for me or get an AI robot that I could put at stadiums that would watch the players and send me back evaluations or something. But I don't think we're there yet. That's what's going to that's why I'll have a job forever, is there's probably no AI camera that could ever watch a game or a player and be able to correctly, tell you what he is.
I think what separates you maybe from some of the others is you're there. You're the owner operator. Yeah. You are there. You're not relying on some other people. I mean, if there's someone there, yeah, you see him for yourself, and it's your eyes that's evaluating. How important is that for you?
I'm glad you brought that up because I have competition where they'll have 4 scouts in Ohio that'll divide it up. You got 4 different brains watching things, and you got 4 different evaluators. Do a fantasy draft. 4 different people pick 4 different guys. They all see things the different way. I ask people who their favorite NFL quarterback is. They all pick a different guy. So when it's just me doing the evaluations, everything's coming through me, and I see the same things every year. So people who have getting my report, like, oh, Mark always likes big receivers. Mm-hmm. Mark will always downgrade, this. Mark doesn't like this type of player on defense, or Mark likes, linebackers. They kind of know what I like, and I kind of know over the history of time where, boy, you've missed on kids. Why did you miss on them? Mm-hmm. And I've made those corrections over the years so I don't miss, which, I think people trust me. Getting them to trust 4 or 5 other people with me is a little trickier. So I think that's been the secret.
That's the key, though. I think
consistent
is being consistent and being not afraid to say, "Hey, I missed." And look, we're all gonna. You're gonna. But you don't want to. But
I'll miss this year. I'll go see a player and maybe not like them, but I don't know if they're misses till 3 or 4 years later because, they'll get a scholarship sometimes, but they may never get on the field.
Have you heard from players who have graduated? Went to college, and have you heard from some of those guys?
I run into them all over the place. And one step further is I went to a college camp this summer, and there had to be 15 coaches there that were on Scouting Ohio as players.
Wow.
That are now coaches. At big-time colleges. Derek Keefe was the #1 receiver in Ohio. He went to Alabama to play receiver. He's now a coach at Maryland. Came right over and was like, oh my gosh, I remember being in your book and how much it meant to me back then. And I looked over and I'm like, well, there's Mike McCray from Trotwood and there's that coach from here. And Christian Dukes at YSU was on the website, and it's a crazy how many people came through this system.
But it got to make you feel good when you hear from those people.
Yes, because our relationship was I always did them a favor. I didn't charge you anything. I helped you out. I helped grease the wheels. I was never a guy that I took pictures of you. I was a fan of yours. Sure. So they really appreciate that, especially when they're young, and this is probably the most special thing, is when you find a sophomore that doesn't know he's any good and you walk over and say, hey, I'm a scout. I liked what you did today and I want you on my site. That's a day for that kid. 3 years later when he has 10 offers, everyone in the whole school and the whole world tells him how great he is. But that first guy who came over there and said, you know what? I think you got something. Well, I don't have any offers yet. Don't worry, you will.
And I would assume that entices the kid to work harder than when they hear it from someone like you.
If they're not working hard already to get to that point, it should. And with what's available today and NIL and scholarships, and if you realize you're one of the lucky players that has a chance at all that, it should put you in a different stratosphere than the other kids on the team. They're working for their team goals, and they're working hard for that, but in the back of your mind, I got to do that and a little more.
Mark, it's outstanding. I mean, you work from your home, you travel a lot. We appreciate the time. Safe travels throughout the state. Before we go, where's the one place that you went to and you're like, wow, everyone has to come here to see this stadium or whatever? I know I'm putting you on
Yeah,
the spot.
Death Valley, Steubenville, the Pit, Elder, Coldwater, Ohio, like, just some of the Americana you get in different places. St. Clairsville, anywhere that's like on the outer edges of Ohio that people don't really get. Down on the river at Ironton, being down at Wheelersburg and some of these places, it'd be easy to say St. Ed's, Ignatius, but the Pit at Elder and Death Valley at Steubenville, it reminds me of like Beyond Thunderdome, where the fans are like on top of you and that horse is breathing fire, and it's really cool for like high school stadiums to have that atmosphere, and it's really cool to have a state like Ohio that has such a tradition, and like people care about high school football. You go to other states, and I have friends that coach in other states. It's not the same on Friday night. The stands aren't full. The TV stations aren't there. The message boards aren't there. The Twitter interactions and all that stuff aren't there. They go to NASCAR or they go whatever that geographical sport is.
Well, you're the best in the business, and I'm not just saying that because you've been doing this for a long time. You know this state better than anybody else when it comes to high school football. We appreciate your time and safe travels throughout the rest of the season. And you go to playoff games, you go to state championship games, and it is scoutingohio.com. Check out the website because it is terrific. And for the players and everybody else, it's terrific for them as well.
Thank you for having me. You guys have been such a supporter for so long, and you're one of the best in the business. Well, I don't know if you're the best, but after 20 years of dealing with you.
I appreciate it. And again, Mark joins us on our weekly segment on 21 News at 6 and 11, and certainly we appreciate that. But that will do it for this edition of the Score Podcast. Be sure to check out all of our other podcasts where you listen to podcasts.